To start this, you'll want to start off with a pencil, eraser, and something round. I'm using a bowl from my kitchen cabinet. I found that to be the best circle shape that I need. And you're going to essentially place the widest part of whatever round object you're using off center, kind of towards the right, upper right hand corner of the canvas, and then trace around that with your pencil. Once your circle is complete, we're going to start drawing a tree on the left side of the canvas. I am holding my pencil like kind of at the end to give me a little bit less control of where my pencil tip is. We're trying to recreate bark. Trees are not smooth, so you don't want these lines to be completely straight. You want them to have a lot of curves and kind of indentions to recreate the look of bark on the canvas. You can mimic the tree shape that I'm drawing, or if you're comfortable kind of winging it, that's totally fine. I'm trying to create a tree that looks a little bit like a claw. So follow along here if you like, or if you feel confident that you can get the tree looking the way you want it to, go for it. Something to remember about trees is that if you're ever drawing one and you're not quite sure where to put branches, or you're struggling with that, a good trick is to continually draw Y shapes off of other Y shapes. So I just did a Y kind of up in the top left hand corner of the canvas, and now I'm just continuing to add in some detail by adding in a bunch of other Y shapes. That's a really good rule of thumb for trees, especially if you're not adding leaves to them, if you want them to be skeletal looking, or if it's a deciduous tree that's bare, just when in doubt, draw a Y. The last step in blocking out what we will eventually be painting is drawing in a bat in the middle of the moon. You can play with size here. You don't have to make it as big as mine. The basic structure is an elongated oval for the center of the body with kind of a point for the tail. We're not going to get super detailed because everything is going to end up being a silhouette, but you can block in the ears and the tail off of that, and then the wings extending off of the body. And again, you can take some creative liberties here. It doesn't have to be as big as I'm drawing. You can also play with placement. I really like mine in the center of the moon to make it seem like it's flying directly at you. But if you want it off center, or if you want to draw a couple bats, you can take creative liberty here as well. Alright, so once you have the basic structure for the bat blocked in, take time to make final adjustments, erase anything that you're not a super big fan of, redraw some things if you like, and we will get started painting. Okay, so from here you'll set up your paint. For my palette, I've used just a plate from my kitchen with aluminum foil over top to make for easy cleanup, and I will only be using the colors seen here. So we have a magenta, cyan, yellow, and then I've also added a little bit of orange, red, and black for fun. I also have a mug of water to use for cleaning my brushes and blending a little bit, and then a variety of different sized brushes. What you don't see is I also have a rag or a few paper towels to help clean brushes as well. So I'm starting with kind of a mid-size brush, not super big. Nothing on the palette really warrants, or nothing on the canvas, I should say, really warrants a super big brush. And I'm starting with yellow, and I'm painting directly into the center of the moon. And what I'm doing is kind of painting in a swirly motion, kind of taking the flat edge of my brush and swooping it around in circles to kind of mimic movement in the moon, so we're not just painting a flat circle, if this kind of makes sense. So as best as you can, try to mimic my wrist movements. The cool thing about yellow is that you can also paint, if you've drawn lightly enough with your pencil, you can also paint directly on top of the pencil marks that you've made, and it'll be fine because you'll be going in with different colors on top, so you won't see those pencil marks afterwards. So continue from here, just painting in circular motions, yellow up to the lines to the edge of the moon. Okay, so now we're going to add a little color to the moon, so we're not just working with a flat yellow circle. So I'm starting with the orange I have here, and what you'll do is, again, with the same brush that you used, I find a brush that's a little bit flat to help the most. Go in around the edges while the yellow paint is still wet, mind you, and paint in some orange around. If both paints are still wet, it will be easier to blend, so you don't want to do this after the yellow paint is dried. So as quickly as you can, go in, and then with a dry brush or a brush with a little bit of water, you can see I'm blending the orange into the yellow as best as I can. Continue this all the way around the moon, and then we'll add a little bit of color to add a little more drama after the orange is on. At this point, I'm going to take a third brush and a little bit of the magenta paint and start placing it and blending it into the orange paint in strategic places kind of around the edges of the circle. I'm not doing this all the way around like I did with the orange. I'm only doing it kind of at the bottom left hand or right hand side of the moon, and then I think at the top in a little bit kind of on the opposite side. Play around with it to see if this works for you. Again, you want to take a third brush and mix the magenta into the orange and the yellow paint while it's still a little bit wet. If the edges of the moon are also not looking as crisp as they did when you first traced around your round object at the beginning, that's okay. We're going to be painting around them in a darker color, so it won't matter as much if they're not as straight as you would like. But again, using the same blending technique that we've been using this whole time, just kind of add some magenta to give the moon a little bit more drama. Okay, so as you can see, I've added a lot more orange to this. I have extended the orange using the exact same technique that we've been using this whole time into the moon a bit farther to create a bit more drama, is the word I've been using here consistently. Right now I'm just adding a little bit more yellow to blend these a little bit more seamlessly. And again, here you can take a few creative liberties. You can either leave the orange and blended on the edges of the moon, or you can do what I've done and you can extend it into the center a little bit more if you feel confident enough to do so. Again, here I'm adding a little bit more magenta to create darker edges as well. So just kind of swapping between these three colors, blend until the moon looks right to you. Okay, so at this point we're going to start painting in the background, and the first thing we want to do is create our color. So we're going to be mixing some color here. I'm starting with the magenta and I'm going to add the cyan. You always want to add dark to light to create a purple, kind of a bluish purple. This color combination will create like a true purple if that's the way you want to go. I think mine ends up being pretty much a straight purple. You can't see it here, but you can also add a little bit of black if you want to add darken the hue just a little bit, but create a color that you like. I also mix a little bit of paint at a time and then continue to mix more as I go. This is good for not wasting paint if you don't have enough of it, and also because I really like variation in each of the blues or the purples that I add to the background. It creates a little bit more of a dynamic background than just a static color. Same principle to the moon, but we're not blending anything really. We're just kind of painting similar colors on top of each other. So once you have the purple or the blue in the hue that you like, take the flat brush, and I started with painting around with a small brush around the edge of the moon. This is where you can kind of correct any of the lines on the moon that you might not like by painting in that darker color, but just go trace around the edge of the moon so it's easier to paint on the background afterwards. Okay, so at this point you can take a larger brush or continue with the same size brush, and around the moon in the background, continue with that like circular swooping motion brush strokes that we were using for the moon, to kind of mimic that in the background. Paint around the moon in circular shapes, continuing all the way to the edges of the canvas. Okay, also a quick note, at this point your paint should still be transparent enough for you to see through it. It was when I was painting, it was transparent enough that I could see the pencil lines through the paint, but if that's not what's happening with you, don't panic. You can stop at this point. Since we're not blending necessarily, we don't really need the paint to stay wet. So you can darken the lines, go in with your pencil and sharpen the pencil lines for the tree especially. The bat will be fine, but if you're losing the tree in this mass of purple, you can darken those lines to see if that will help, or you can draw in the tree afterwards. You'll still be able to see a little bit of the branches in the moon because the yellow and the orange are so transparent. But if the purple is if the purple is blocking that out, those are the two options: to either darken the lines real quick and then paint them in later, or to just continue with purple and then redraw the tree on top of the dried paint. If your purple paint has completely covered up the tree, which it is possible, it should be transparent enough for you to see through it, but if not, this is a really good point for you to redraw the tree using whatever lines you can see as a base for the rest of the structure. I can kind of see my lines, but they're not as dark as I would like them to be, so I am just retracing them so I can see as I'm painting. Okay, now it is time to paint the tree. This is probably the easiest step because we are just taking black paint and we are painting in the lines of the tree that you've drawn. You can tint the black paint a little if you want, or you could mix a really dark purple using the cyan and the magenta and the black, but I'm basically going in with straight black. I've tried to tint the paint with a little bit of cyan, but because of the cardinal only add dark to light paint rule, it's not really noticeable. But no matter, take black paint, paint in the tree, and that basically finishes out this step. If you like, you can go in with smaller brushes to create more branches of the tree. But next we are going to do paint the bat. It's the same concept as the tree, just black paint and paint inside the lines.